Welcome to Tonia's Kitchen, where taste and nutrition go hand in hand. Here is Tonia King.
My guest today is cookbook author Pyet De Spain. We're talking about the brand new book, Rooted in Fire. Thanks for joining me, Pyet.
Thank you for having me.
It is a beautiful book, and I'm wondering if it's your first.
Yes, Rooted in Fire is my first cookbook, and it's a little bit more reads like a memoir, tells a lot about my personal story and journey with food.
So it's a celebration of Native American and Mexican cooking, and some of the recipes are just so interesting. The pictures are so beautiful. Tell me a little bit about the history of doing this book.
Yeah, definitely. I originally wanted to address the book in a way that was was very informational about Indigenous culture and some language. There is throughout the book some words translated in the Potawatomi language, and that was something that was very important to me. But my literary team was like, yeah, we need to learn more about you. So then came a lot of my personal stories and journeys and about recipes that I love. And I think that's really where the memoir-esque part of this came in.
And your story is really interesting. And it sounds like such a great homage to your culture.
Yeah, I really tried to express how much beauty was in both the Native American and Mexican culture and how they are so similar, but also different in a lot of different ways. And that's exactly how I really like to express myself through my craft and through, just cooking as a chef and really representing who I am. And when I think about this, like the title, Rooted in Fire, I think about all in which I'm rooted in and my passions and the things that I care about and the way that I carry myself in the world. It really boils down to my upbringing and the traditions that I was raised on. And throughout the book, you get to read some of those beautiful stories and just philosophies in which Indigenous people believe and know to be true for them. And that's just something that was important when sharing these recipes and these stories about my upbringing.
That's what's really cool because every recipe has a story to start. It's full of your life for sure, but some really interesting recipes, which I'd love to get into now. So why don't you share a couple with us?
Yeah, definitely. One of my favorite recipes definitely has to be the bison. There's a braised bison Colorado. So this chili Colorado sauce is something that has been in my family for a while. Pretty long time. I had uncles that owned restaurants in Kansas City, and this was like one of their best-selling dishes on the menu. And our family is on my dad's side, my family's very competitive and very passionate about their foods. We had such a big family, so we'd always have two of every dish on the table. So you'd have people competing, whose ham is the most juiciest, or whose rice
Right.
is the best, or whose beans are the best. But this particular recipe is one that a lot of people, my family, take a lot of pride in. Beautiful dried chiles that are rehydrated and made into a very luscious, deep red, flavorful sauce. And you basically are braising bison in it, which is great because bison has a lower fat contents than you would with beef or pork. So braising is the best method for cooking bison. So it keeps it nice and tender. And yeah, it's a very flavorful, but also recipe, but also it really joins both of my cultures together with that significance of the protein of bison and that sauce.
Is it easy to make?
It takes a little bit of time for sure. You definitely have to, take the time to rehydrate the chiles and making the sauce. But once you get it down and you get it all in the pot, and you're able to just to kind of, put it in the oven and let it do its thing. You can even put it in a crock pot. We grew up on crock pots, and I was in that part of that generation. And so it's just something that you kind of leave for a couple of hours, let it do its thing, and then come back to it. But it's a little bit of a labor of love. But once you get the hang of it and you've done it a few times, it actually becomes a little bit easier than expected. Another recipe that I really love is the corn cake. I have a sweet corn cake in the book. This particular recipe was really inspired by the Navajo Nation. I had a experience, my sister-in-law, she's Navajo, Danae. I have a lot of nieces and nephews. I have 11, but she's the second oldest, and she had her coming of age ceremony. And one of the traditions is the young girls have to grind corn down and make enough corn flour to make a cake for the whole community. And this cake is is cooked in an underground oven that they've dug out, and they have a fire that's heating the ground for 24 hours. They line it then with the corn husk. They pour the cake batter in. They cover it with corn husk. They cover it up with a fire. And then that fire cooks the cake for, overnight, almost 11 hours. And once it's revealed, that cake is then served to the community. And that's something that the young girl is responsible for. So when I had that experience of being there to support my niece, I just thought about how incredible that recipe was. And some folks make it a little different. Some people will put raisins in it and some people won't. And that was really the inspiration for this dish. And I was like, I would love to recreate that moment, but without having to dig a hole and making someone grind corn down for hours. But I thought, man, this would be a great opportunity to recreate something really special. So I added the strawberries in it. So in a way, it's a little bit like an upside down strawberry cake. But it's really rich, and it's really good for tea time and coffee, which is really something that's important. And on my Latin side of the community, my Hispanic side, we always have our cafecito hours. So having a nice little cake to pair it with is always a good idea.
It sounds wonderful and really interesting as far as a way to prepare it. I mean, the original way, digging the hole. How
Definitely.
cool. Wow.
Yes. Yeah, it's very interesting how much I've been able to learn over the last couple of years when I really started diving into indigenous foodways and just really cooking with the elements of nature and earth. It's really quite beautiful. And although, yes, it's a labor of love to cook that way, but it always tastes so much better.
Oh yeah, that's kind of like when you're camping and you're outside cooking all the time.
Exactly.
Everything tastes better when it's made outside.
It does.
It really does. You've got some really interesting recipes in here.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one of my favorites has to be the Three Sisters. It's a simple recipe, but there's a lot of cultural meaning behind it. The Three Sisters, for those that don't know, are beans, corn, and squash. Together, they are the perfect protein. And they also, the Three Sisters is a ancient agricultural planting method that indigenous folks have been surviving on for forever. And they all contribute to something in the environment in which they're growing. So the corn will act as a trellis for beans to then, grow up like a stalk. And then those beans then put nitrogen back into the soil, helping the corn to grow. And then you have our squash. Now, the squash has the long, viney leaves, which we've all been to a pumpkin patch. We've all seen the leaves and how
Sure.
sprawled out they can get. Well, those leaves actually create shade for the soil and protects them. Kind of like a mulch, and also helps kind of seal in some of that moisture. So all of these elements, the beans, the corn, the squash, as they grow, they add something to the environment that makes it the perfect environment for them to really thrive together. And so this planting method was obviously utilized a lot for subsistence, for survival, and for food, but also just that symbolicism of everything working together. A lot of folks in the indigenous community really implement that in their personal lives with the understanding that together we are all stronger, together we can really thrive as a community. And just that thought alone for me is just so special. So putting the Three Sisters recipe in there was something that I thought was very crucial when explaining our indigenous foodways and the purpose behind a lot of the recipes. They're all very meaningful, and they reach beyond just substance and just beyond a pretty plate on the table.
Interesting. I love it. The other thing I love is you have this section called Celebrate the Seasons.
Hmm.
And it's just wonderful because a lot of people these days cook seasonally. I know I do. I always try to cook with whatever season we're in. So why don't you share something? We're coming up into winter.
Definitely. We think about these times of the year, we're obviously thinking about the big feast that is going to be, present. And when I approach this particular chapter of the book, this is one of my favorite chapters of the book, and it's not very long, but there's a lot of goodness in it. And I talk a lot about during these times of the year where we're getting together and we think about the dinner table, let's let's reflect and like let's bring some intentionality to the conversation, and let's bring up the elephant in the room as to why Thanksgiving is even a holiday. Let's obviously honor the folks, the indigenous folks of this nation, but also let's honor the foods. Let's open up the conversation to our relatives and ask them things that we've never asked them before. Let's bring some meaning back into the conversation and to the table. And that is just such a special way for me personally. When I wrote the book, I had to call my grandmothers and ask them questions about our family and ask them questions about themselves that I never even thought to ask. Asking my grandmother, how did you become so familiar with Mexican food, and why do you speak fluent Spanish when you are from Virginia? And you're like Spanish and French, you're a white woman, but you're fluent speaking, and all of your kids are Mexican, half Mexican, and everything that I've ever known about being Mexican American is taught by my grandmother's side of the family, my dad's side, which is pretty interesting to think about. So I had these conversations with her, and I never asked her these questions. And I thought, wow, how awesome would it be to give folks the advice on this is such a wonderful way to reconnect with our family, is just to ask those questions about their childhood, ask them questions about their favorite dishes growing up. And these are things that you can implement very simply, but also create traditions moving forward, and just giving the acknowledgement to the goodness in the room and the community in the room, whether it is your friends or your family, and really just building those bonds. And it makes things a little bit more meaningful. But when we think about the food specifically and eating with the seasons, obviously we want to be mindful of that. So the recipes in each chapter give you an insight on things to look forward to, or things to cook during that time of the year.
Well, for example, a celebration of winter. Let's talk about either the cranberry and cinnamon sparkler or maybe the honey and habanero roasted butternut squash.
Oh my goodness.
Tell us how to do both of those.
Yeah, definitely. So the cranberry sparkler is really easy. I am in a chapter of sobriety, and I know there's a lot of folks that are on that journey. And so the sparkler is a way to still have fun and still feel like you're a part of the party, but it's really quite simple. You're taking cranberry juice and you are warming it up in a pot with some maple and some cinnamon sticks, and really allowing those flavors to meld together. And then once it's cooled down, you can add it to some fresh ice and top it off with a little bit of mineral water or sparkling water. And if you are into spirits, you can add your favorite spirit into it, whether that's a gin or a vodka or whatever it is that you want to have during the holiday season. So it can be a mocktail or a cocktail. So it's super simple and easy. And you can also squeeze a little bit of lime or citrus in it or lemon into it, just to kind of give it that little bit of like balance of acidity and sweetness, and the nice aromas and flavors from the cinnamon. It's a really great way to, like I mentioned, to enjoy a mocktail with the people that are also drinking cocktails. So then you have the butternut squash. Now, this squash is so delicious, and I love a little bit of sweet and savory. There's kind of like a theme throughout the cookbook with a little bit of spice and peppers and chiles and everything. And that's my Mexican side coming through. But with the habaneros are one of my favorite peppers because they pack a good punch, but they also have this really nice, like tropical flavor. Once you can, kind of level out the spice a little bit. And so all the other ingredients like the honey and the fattiness from the butter that's in that recipe really kind of cuts some of that spice and gives you that tropical flavor still. And then you have that on the butternut squash, which is in season, obviously in the fall and the winter time. So it's a different way to enjoy your squash. And you're just roasting that squash in the oven with that nice little glaze on it. And I like to pull it out every couple of 10 minutes or so and then reglaze it, and I put it back in just because those flavors really seep into the squash and really start to caramelize the top there. So if you have a book in front of you, you can open it up and just see how gorgeous that picture is. But it's just it's one of my favorite recipes, just because butternut squash is one of my favorite squashes. But that paired with that really nice glaze is just something special.
That is wonderful. Absolutely. And if you like a little kick, the habanero will do it for you.
Absolutely. Definitely. One of the teas that I really love is the hibiscus and prickly pear syrup. Now that prickly pear syrup is gorgeous. It's this gorgeous, like deep reddish pinkish color. It's like a magenta almost, and it has a really gorgeous color to it. So if you're adding that syrup to pretty much any, drink, it's going to add a beautiful color to it. But on top of that, you have the hibiscus. So growing up,
Are
we
you making that syrup though? Are you making the prickly pear
Oh,
syrup?
absolutely. Absolutely. And
And
for folks that can't find prickly pear, you can obviously substitute it out for whatever sweetener that you have. But I live in California and I have access to prickly pear. So it's something that is in Northgate and all of our local,
yeah.
Latin markets and things like that. So
And
it's
how do you
easy
make
for
it?
so the prickly pear, you basically take the fruit and you are juicing it, or you can just chop it up and put it into a pot or a pan. You'll mix some agave or sugar with it. I like to use agave, and you're just cooking it down into a nice syrup, and then you're straining all the seeds out of it so that way you're not getting any of those seeds and pulp into your tea. And you're straining it, you're getting a nice syrup from it, and then you're steeping your hibiscus tea and you're adding the syrup to the tea. So it's this nice little and prickly pear is something that doesn't have an overpowering taste. It's really just like a really sweet fruit on its own. It has those natural sugars that are growing inside the cactus, but it's just a really nice, beautiful color and a little bit of tradition on the Mexican side of my family is growing up eating drinking the hibiscus agua frescas, and so this is kind of like an homage to that, but in a warm way. You can also chill it and have it with ice, but it's a really nice hydrating. Hibiscus is known for hydration. It's a nice hydrating tea that you can have both hot and cold.
We are talking with cookbook author Pyet De Spain about her brand new book, Rooted in Fire, a celebration of Native American and Mexican cooking. How do we find you on social media?
Yes, my Instagram and most social media handles are Chef Piet. And I also have a website that's pietsplate.com where you can find all the information about my book and about my show called Spirit Plate with PBS Food.
Great. So you're on PBS.
I am. I have a show that's called Spirit Plate. It's a cooking traveling show where we travel to 6 indigenous communities and we explore the indigenous foodways of all of them. And it's really something special. We've gone to my tribal reservation. We go to Hawaii. We're in Alaska with the Tlingit and the Haida
Wow.
tribe. It's incredible.
Oh, how exciting. Was it also exciting to be on Gordon Ramsay's show and kicking butt with being the winner?
Yeah, absolutely. I still kind of pinch myself. I can't believe that happened. But yeah, it was an incredible experience, something that obviously don't regret doing, but it was very scary walking into it. But yeah, it really opened up, winning that show opened up so much opportunity for me, including this book and the PBS show.
Oh, that's great. That's so exciting. It is very exciting. A beautiful book. It's really a pleasure talking with you, Piet, and I wish you lots of luck and success.
Thank you
And I
so
hope you
much.
will keep us posted as to your future developments in the culinary world.
I definitely will. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you'll subscribe to this podcast as we continue to take you around the world of food and wine on Tonia's Kitchen.